My name is Victoria Sterling, and when I discovered that my sister had vanished with $50 million from our father's private safe, I smiled. Not because I had lost everything I had worked 15 years to accumulate, but because she had unknowingly taken the decoy money while leaving behind what she never knew existed. The real fortune was hidden in a secondary compartment that contained something far more valuable than cash, something that would expose 15 years of lies, transform our family's understanding of success, and prove that the daughter they had dismissed as a failed artist was actually the architect of their entire financial empire. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up as Victoria Sterling meant understanding that success was measured exclusively in financial terms, specifically in the growth of Sterling Capital Management, the investment firm that my grandfather had established in. Our family's identity was built around the principle that wealth creation was the highest form of achievement, that financial acumen was the only skill worth developing, and that anything that did not directly contribute to expanding the family's investment portfolio was essentially meaningless. My father, Marcus Sterling, had transformed my grandfather's modest brokerage firm into a multi-billion-dollar asset management company. He possessed an intuitive understanding of market psychology, an ability to identify undervalued opportunities before competitors recognized them, and a reputation for generating consistent returns that attracted high-net-worth clients from across the globe. His success was legendary within financial circles, his strategies were studied at business schools, and his annual letters to investors were considered required reading for anyone serious about wealth management. Money is the only language that matters in this world, my father would remind us during family dinners, his attention focused on market reports rather than conversation. Everything else is hobby or entertainment. Success means building wealth that creates more wealth, generation after generation. My older sister, Sophia, absorbed these lessons completely. From childhood, she demonstrated an aptitude for financial analysis and strategic thinking that earned our father's immediate approval and sustained attention. She excelled in mathematics, studied economics at Wharton, and joined Sterling Capital immediately after graduation. By age 28, she had been promoted to senior portfolio manager, managing over $2 billion in client assets, while developing investment strategies that consistently outperformed market benchmarks. I admired Sophia's achievements, but our intellectual interest diverged in ways that created lasting tension within our family dynamic. While Sophia was fascinated by market mechanisms and portfolio optimization, I found myself drawn to visual arts, creative expression, and the psychological aspects of human behavior that influenced both artistic appreciation and economic decision-making. Why do you waste time painting when you could be learning about compound interest? My father asked when I was 14, discovering me working on a landscape painting in our family's art studio. Because art helps me understand how people think and feel, I replied. Understanding psychology seems important for understanding markets too. My father dismissed this connection immediately. Markets are driven by mathematics and logic, not feelings. Successful investing requires analytical thinking, not artistic sensitivity. This fundamental disagreement about the relationship between creativity and financial success would define our family dynamic for the next 2 decades. My father viewed artistic pursuits as frivolous distractions from serious career development, while I believed that understanding human psychology and emotional decision-making was essential for predicting market behavior and identifying investment opportunities. The tension intensified during my high school years, when I announced my intention to study fine arts at Columbia University with a concentration in art history and psychology. The decision represented everything my father opposed about non-financial career paths. Art school is expensive preparation for poverty, he stated definitively, during the family meeting convened to discuss my college plans. Sterling family members build wealth, we do not pursue hobbies at university level. Art and psychology are not hobbies, I argue. Understanding human behavior and cultural trends affects consumer preferences, market sentiment, and investment opportunities. My mother, Catherine Sterling, attempted to mediate these discussions, though she ultimately supported my father's perspective on practical career development. As someone who had abandoned her own career in interior design to support my father's business expansion, she understood the sacrifices required for financial success. "Victoria, your father has built everything we have through focus and discipline," she explained during a private conversation. "Artistic interests are wonderful for personal enrichment, but they do not provide financial security or family legacy." Despite family pressure, I enrolled at Columbia and pursued my intended course of study. The academic environment provided intellectual stimulation and creative fulfillment that had been absent from my family's wealth-focused discussions. However, it also created increasing distance between my educational experience and my family's understanding of valuable professional development. During university, I discovered that my intuitive understanding of human psychology and cultural patterns provided unique insights into consumer behavior, demographic trends, and emerging market opportunity. Art history revealed connections between cultural movements and economic developments that traditional financial analysis often overlooked. Psychology courses taught me to recognize cognitive biases and emotional patterns that influenced investment decisions and market volatility. Most significantly, I began to understand that successful investing required not just mathematical analysis, but also intuitive understanding of human nature, cultural shifts, and psychological factors that traditional financial education rarely addressed. My artistic training enhanced my ability to recognize patterns, anticipate trends, and understand the emotional components of economic decision-making. However, translating these insights into practical applications proved challenging within the context of my family's expectations and the traditional structure of financial services education. When I attempted to explain these connections during family conversations, my father's response was consistently dismissive. "Art appreciation does not qualify someone to manage investments," he would say. "Financial markets require quantitative analysis, not cultural theory." The defining moment occurred during my senior year, when I presented an independent research project analyzing the correlation between emerging art movements and subsequent consumer spending patterns in related industries. The analysis demonstrated that artistic trends often preceded broader cultural shifts that created significant investment opportunities in fashion, technology, entertainment, and lifestyle sectors. My professor, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, recognized the practical applications of this research and encouraged me to consider graduate study in behavioral economics or cultural analysis as applied to financial markets. However, when I shared these possibilities with my family, their reaction was predictably negative. "You are creating academic justifications for avoiding real work," my father concluded. "If you want to contribute to this family's success, you need practical training in finance, not theoretical degrees in art psychology." The pressure to conform to family expectations while pursuing intellectual interests that felt authentic created internal conflict that persisted throughout my university year. I completed my degree with high academic honors, while maintaining the pretense that I would eventually transition to traditional financial career development. Upon graduation, I faced the choice that many young adults encounter when family expectations conflict with personal interests and professional instincts. I could accept a position at Sterling Capital and pursue the career path my father had planned for me. Or, I could attempt to forge an independent professional identity that integrated my diverse interests and capabilities. The compromise I ultimately chose satisfied no one completely while creating the foundation for 15 years of deception that would culminate in the events surrounding the $50 million and my sister's disappearance. Rather than joining Sterling Capital directly or pursuing graduate study in behavioral economics, I announced my intention to establish myself as an independent artist while developing my investment knowledge through self-directed study and gradual involvement in family business activity. This decision represented a calculated attempt to maintain family relationships while preserving my autonomy to explore the connections between artistic insight and financial opportunity. My father's reaction was immediate and harsh. Independent artist is a polite term for unemployed. If you want to paint as a hobby while working in finance, that is acceptable. If you want to pretend that painting is a career, you will discover that artistic talent does not pay for housing or healthcare. I want to prove that artistic insight can contribute to investment success, I explain. Understanding cultural trends and human psychology can identify opportunities that traditional analysis misses. You want to prove something that is not true, he replied. Art and finance are separate worlds. The sooner you accept that reality, the sooner you can begin building real wealth. Despite his skepticism, my father agreed to provide minimal financial support for 2 years, while I attempted to establish artistic credibility and develop practical investment knowledge. The arrangement included access to a small studio apartment, basic living expenses, and permission to observe sterling capital operations as an unofficial intern. The conditions were designed to demonstrate the impracticality of artistic careers, while gradually transitioning me toward traditional financial work. My father expected that exposure to real investment opportunities would overcome my resistance to conventional career development. What he did not anticipate was that I would use this transitional period to develop a sophisticated understanding of both artistic markets and investment strategies, while maintaining the appearance of struggling with artistic career development. During my first year as an independent artist, I did indeed create and exhibit artwork through local galleries and weekend art fairs. However, this visible artistic activity was only one component of a more complex professional development strategy that remained hidden from my family's observation. While maintaining my studio practice and participating in art exhibitions, I was simultaneously conducting intensive research into the intersection of cultural trends and investment opportunities. I analyzed the relationship between artistic movements and subsequent commercial development, studied the psychological factors that influenced both aesthetic preferences and financial decision-making, and developed frameworks for identifying emerging opportunities through cultural pattern recognition. More significantly, I began making small-scale investments using the limited funds available to me, testing theories about how artistic insight could identify undervalued opportunities in creative industries, lifestyle sectors, and technology companies whose products reflected emerging cultural preferences. These early investments were necessarily modest given my limited capital, but they provided practical experience in applying cultural analysis to financial decision-making. Within 6 months, my portfolio had generated returns that significantly exceeded market averages, though the absolute amounts involved were too small to attract attention from my family. By the end of my first year, I had developed a systematic approach to investment analysis that integrated traditional financial metrics with cultural trend analysis and psychological pattern recognition. The methodology was producing consistent results, but the scale remained small enough to avoid challenging my father's assumptions about the relationship between artistic interests and financial capability. The breakthrough came during my second year, when I identified an opportunity that would test both my analytical framework and my ability to implement investment strategies without family awareness. Through my involvement in the art community, I had observed increasing interest in digital art platforms and virtual reality applications for artistic expression. Traditional art market participants were largely dismissive of these developments, viewing them as technological novelties rather than fundamental shifts in how artistic content would be created, distributed, and monetized. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. However, my analysis suggested that digital art platforms represented the early stages of a transformation that would eventually affect entertainment, education, marketing, and social interaction industry. The psychological factors that drove artistic appreciation were increasingly being expressed through digital mediums, creating opportunities for companies that could effectively serve these emerging preferences. I identified 3 publicly traded companies whose business models positioned them to benefit from the expansion of digital creative platforms. None of these companies were particularly well known within traditional investment circles, and their stock prices reflected limited investor awareness of their potential in emerging creative markets. Using the modest savings I had accumulated through small-scale trading, I invested $15,000 across these three positions. Within 4 months, the combined value of these investments had increased to over $60,000 as broader market recognition of digital art opportunities began to develop. The success of this analysis and investment provided validation of my theoretical framework while generating capital that could be reinvested in additional opportunity. More importantly, it demonstrated that my approach could identify significant opportunities that traditional financial analysis was overlooking. However, sharing this success with my family would have undermined the narrative they had constructed about my artistic career choice and its inevitable financial consequence. Instead, I decided to continue developing my investment capabilities while maintaining the appearance of struggling with artistic career development. This decision initiated a pattern of financial success concealed behind artistic failure that would persist for the next 13 years. My family believed I was barely supporting myself through art sales and occasional teaching, while I was actually building a sophisticated investment portfolio that was generating substantial returns through cultural trend analysis and psychological pattern recognition. The deception was psychologically challenging but strategically necessary. Revealing my investment success would have forced confrontation with my father about the validity of my approach while potentially limiting my access to the cultural environments and artistic communities that provided essential information for my analytical framework. By maintaining my identity as a struggling artist, I preserved the relationships and information sources that enabled my investment success while avoiding family pressure to conform to traditional financial career expectations. The irony was profound. My father's dismissal of artistic insight as irrelevant to financial success was preventing him from recognizing that his daughter was developing investment capabilities that would eventually exceed his own performance, while operating entirely outside his awareness. As my investment portfolio grew from thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, the practical challenges of concealing financial success while maintaining artistic struggle became increasingly complex. I required sophisticated financial structures that could manage substantial assets while remaining invisible to family observation, legal frameworks that could protect growing wealth while avoiding tax implications that might attract attention, and operational systems that could execute investment strategies without creating paper trails that my family might discover. The solution involved establishing a network of offshore accounts, domestic trusts, and investment entities that operated under carefully constructed legal identity. These structures were entirely legitimate and fully compliant with all applicable regulations, but they were designed to obscure the connection between my public identity as a struggling artist and my private activities as a successful investor. Working with financial attorneys and accounting professionals who specialized in privacy protection for high net worth individuals, I created an investment infrastructure that could manage millions of dollars while maintaining complete separation from my family's knowledge or involvement. The professional fees for maintaining these structures were substantial, but they represented essential insurance against premature discovery of my capabilities. By year 5 of my supposed artistic career, my concealed investment portfolio had reached $8 million. By year 10, it had grown to $32 million. By year 15, the total value approached $60 million, with $50 million held in liquid assets, and the remainder distributed across real estate, private equity positions, and alternative investments. Throughout this period, my family continued to view me as the artistic daughter who had chosen creative expression over financial responsibility. They believed I was surviving through modest art sales, occasional teaching assignments, and minimal financial assistance from my father's continued support. The psychological burden of maintaining this deception was significant, but it was offset by the intellectual satisfaction of proving that artistic insight could generate superior investment returns and the strategic value of developing financial independence without family involvement or oversight. More importantly, my concealed success was providing opportunities to understand my family's actual financial situation and business operations from a perspective they never suspected I possessed. As my investment expertise developed, I began analyzing Sterling Capital's portfolio strategies, client management approaches, and market positioning with the analytical framework I had developed through cultural trend analysis and psychological pattern recognition. What I discovered was both surprising and concerning. While Sterling Capital maintained its reputation for consistent performance and conservative risk management, my analysis revealed that the firm's investment approaches were becoming increasingly outdated and vulnerable to market developments that my cultural analysis suggested were inevitable. My father's investment philosophy emphasized traditional value investing, dividend-focused equity selection, and conservative asset allocation strategies that had been effective during previous decades, but were poorly positioned for the technological and cultural shifts that I could observe developing within creative communities and emerging demographic segments. More troubling, Sterling Capital's client base was aging, and the firm was struggling to attract younger investors whose preferences and expectations differed significantly from traditional high-net-worth individuals. The cultural trends I was tracking suggested that generational wealth transfer would create massive opportunities for investment firms that could effectively serve emerging preferences, while firms that remained focused on traditional approaches would face declining relevance and market share. Sterling Capital was positioned for gradual decline rather than continued growth, though this reality was not yet apparent to my father or other senior professionals within the firm. Their focus on traditional metrics and established client relationships was preventing them from recognizing the fundamental changes that were reshaping wealth management requirements. I possessed information and analytical capabilities that could potentially address these challenges, while positioning Sterling Capital for continued success in changing market conditions. However, sharing this insight would require revealing the investment expertise I had developed, while supposedly pursuing artistic career development. The ethical implications were complex. I could continue building my concealed wealth while allowing my family's business to gradually decline, or I could find ways to contribute my capabilities without exposing the extent of my deception. The decision became urgent during year 14, when I learned that Sterling Capital was facing its first significant client departures in over a decade, with several major accounts transferring their assets to investment firms that offered more innovative approaches and better understanding of emerging market opportunity. My father's response to these departures was to double down on traditional strategies, rather than questioning whether changing client preferences required fundamental adaptations to the firm's investment philosophy and service offering. We have succeeded for 3 generations by maintaining discipline and avoiding fashionable trends, he explained during a family dinner where Sophia expressed concern about competitive pressure. Clients who chase performance through untested strategies will eventually return to proven approaches. I recognized this perspective as the same rigid thinking that had led him to dismiss my artistic interests and their potential applications to investment analysis. He was applying the same inflexibility to changing market conditions that he had applied to my career development, with potentially devastating consequences for the family business. The realization crystallized my understanding that my concealed capabilities represented not just personal financial success, but also the potential salvation of my family's business legacy. However, implementing this contribution would require strategic revelation of my expertise in ways that could transform family relationships, while preserving the investment strategies I had developed through 15 years of hidden work. The opportunity to address this challenge would arise through the $50 million and the elaborate plan I developed to use my sister's predictable behavior to force family recognition of my actual capabilities and contribution. The plan I developed to reveal my hidden empire while exposing my family's misconceptions required careful psychological analysis of each family member's motivations, behavioral patterns, and likely responses to financial opportunity and crisis. The strategy needed to create circumstances that would force honest evaluation of my capabilities while protecting the investment portfolio I had built through 15 years of concealed work. The central element involved deliberately exposing $50 million to theft while ensuring that the real wealth remained protected and that the theft itself would create opportunities for strategic revelation of my expertise and financial independence. I chose my sister Sophia as the unwitting participant in this strategy because her behavior was the most predictable and her motivations the most transparent. Despite her professional success at Sterling Capital, Sophia had always harbored resentment about wealth distribution within our family and ambitions for financial independence that exceeded what her corporate position could provide. More significantly, Sophia believed that I was financially dependent on our father's support and therefore represented no threat to her position as the primary inheritor of family wealth and business control. This assumption would make her vulnerable to manipulation while providing the psychological motivation necessary for the theft that would trigger my revelation strategy. The execution began with careful preparation of the decoy money and the hidden compartment that would contain the documentation proving my actual financial position and investment capability. Working with security specialists and custom manufacturers, I arranged for the installation of a sophisticated secondary compartment within our father's existing safe. The modification was virtually undetectable and required specific knowledge of its existence to access, ensuring that casual observation would not reveal its presence. Within this hidden compartment, I placed comprehensive documentation of my investment portfolio, including account statements showing the $60 million total value, transaction histories demonstrating the analytical framework I had developed, and legal documents establishing my ownership of assets that my family believed did not exist. More importantly, I included detailed analysis of Sterling Capital's competitive position and strategic recommendations for addressing the challenges that were threatening the firm's continued success. This documentation would demonstrate not only my financial independence, but also my capability to contribute meaningfully to the family business. The decoy money in the primary safe compartment was carefully prepared to appear authentic while containing subtle markers that would enable tracking and recovery. The $50 million represented a significant portion of my liquid assets, but it was structured to be recoverable through legal and financial mechanisms that would ultimately strengthen rather than weaken my strategic position. The psychological component of the strategy required engineering circumstances that would motivate Sophia to attempt theft while ensuring that her actions would be discoverable in ways that would maximize family impact and create opportunities for my revelation. I accomplished this through a series of carefully constructed conversations and financial disclosures that established the appearance that I was in possession of unexplained wealth while remaining vulnerable to theft due to my supposed financial naivety and dependence on family support. During a family gathering, I mentioned casually that I had received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative who had appreciated my artistic work. The story was plausible given my artistic connections and provided explanation for why I might temporarily possess substantial cash while lacking the financial sophistication to manage it properly. An inheritance of $50 million is life-changing money, I said during the conversation. I am not sure how to handle that much cash. Maybe Dad could help me figure out proper investment strategies. My father's immediate response was skeptical but interested. $50 million would require careful planning and professional management. You should bring the documentation to my office so we can review the legal and tax implications. I have the money in cash right now, I continued. The settlement was complicated and I wanted to figure out the best approach before making any decision. I put it in Dad's safe until I could get proper advice. This disclosure served multiple purposes. It established my possession of substantial cash, suggested my financial vulnerability and dependence on family guidance, and provided Sophia with information about a significant opportunity that she might view as accessible due to my supposed inexperience with large amounts of money. Sophia's reaction during the conversation confirmed that the strategy was developing as anticipated. Her initial surprise gave way to careful questioning about the inheritance details, the legal processes involved, and my plans for managing the windfall. $50 million requires sophisticated planning, she advised. You should definitely get professional help, but you should also be careful about who has access to information about the inheritance. Large amounts of cash can create security. Her concern appeared genuine, but I recognized the analytical assessment that was occurring behind her seemingly protective advice.
Sophia was evaluating the opportunity while positioning herself as a helpful advisor who could potentially influence my decisions about the money. Over the following weeks, I continued to provide information that would strengthen Sophia's conviction that the cash was vulnerable to appropriation while reinforcing my apparent dependence on family guidance for managing the windfall. The final element required ensuring that Sophia would have access to the safe while creating circumstances that would make theft appear feasible and unlikely to be immediately discovered.
I accomplished this by requesting a family meeting to discuss investment strategies for the inheritance, scheduled for a date when I would be traveling for an art exhibition. The meeting would provide Sophia with legitimate access to our father's office and safe, while my absence would create the appearance that any theft might not be discovered immediately. 3 days before the scheduled meeting, I loaded the $50 million in cash into the primary compartment of our father's safe, while secretly activating recording devices that would document any unauthorized access to the safe during my absence. I also placed tracking devices within the cash bundles and initiated monitoring systems that would provide real-time location information if the money was moved from its current location. The psychological pressure was carefully calibrated to create urgency without appearing suspicious. I mentioned concerns about keeping large amounts of cash in the safe for extended periods and expressed anxiety about making quick decisions about investment strategies that I did not fully understand. Maybe I should just invest everything in conservative funds until I can learn more about managing this much money, I suggested during our final conversation before my departure. $50 million feels like too much responsibility for someone without financial training. Sophia's response provided final confirmation that the strategy was proceeding as designed. Do not make any rushed decisions, she advised. Conservative approaches might not be optimal for someone your age with that much capital. We should discuss more aggressive strategies that could maximize growth over the long term. Her eagerness to influence my investment decisions while emphasizing the importance of acting quickly revealed the psychological positioning that would motivate the theft while providing legal and practical grounds for recovery once her actions were discovered. I departed for my exhibition knowing that within 24 hours, Sophia would attempt to access the safe and appropriate the $50 million, unknowingly triggering the revelation sequence that would transform our family's understanding of wealth, capability, and the true source of financial success they had been enjoying for over a decade. The tracking devices activated at 2:17 a.m. on the morning after my departure, confirming that Sophia had accessed the safe and removed the money. By dawn, she had vanished completely, along with the $50 million that would ultimately prove to be the catalyst for exposing 15 years of carefully hidden truth about who had really been building wealth while everyone thought I was failing as an artist. My smile upon discovering the theft was not just about the successful implementation of my strategy. It was about the knowledge that the secondary compartment contained documentation that would prove my financial independence, while providing my family with investment strategies that could save sterling capital from the decline that traditional approaches would inevitably create. The game had begun, and for the first time in 15 years I would no longer need to hide who I really was or what I had actually accomplished while they thought I was struggling to sell paintings at weekend art fairs. The morning light filtered through the windows of my father's study as I stood before the open safe, maintaining the expression of shocked disbelief that the situation required while internally celebrating the successful execution of a plan 15 years in the making. The empty compartment where $50 million had been carefully arranged now contained only the faint residue of disturbed dust and the subtle scratches that indicated hasty removal of substantial cash bundle. My father discovered the theft at precisely 7:23 a.m., when he arrived early to prepare materials for our scheduled investment consultation meeting. His anguished shout echoed through the Sterling mansion as he confronted the reality that his supposedly secure safe had been violated and that an enormous sum of money had vanished overnight. "Victoria, the money is gone, everything is gone." His voice carried the particular tone of panic that successful people experience when confronting unexpected financial loss. "Someone broke into the safe during the night. We need to call the police immediately." I entered the study with the measured pace of someone processing devastating news, while carefully avoiding any expression that might suggest foreknowledge or satisfaction. The performance required precise emotional calibration to maintain credibility while positioning myself for the strategic revelation that would follow. "What do you mean, gone? How is that possible?" I asked, moving toward the safe with apparent confusion and growing distress. "The money was there yesterday when I checked before leaving for the exhibition." Marcus Sterling stood before the violated safe with his characteristic command presence diminished by circumstances beyond his control. His immediate instinct was to assume external threat rather than considering internal betrayal, a psychological blind spot that would prove crucial for the success of my broader strategy. "Professional thieves must have accessed the safe during the night," he concluded with the certainty of someone who had built his career on rapid assessment and decisive action. "The security system shows no external breaches, but sophisticated criminals have methods for bypassing standard protection systems." His analysis revealed the fundamental limitation that had enabled my deception for 15 years. Marcus Sterling possessed exceptional expertise in traditional financial analysis and market strategy, but his understanding of security systems, family psychology, and the complex motivations that drove individual behavior remained superficial and conventional. "Should we contact the FBI? $50 million represents major theft that requires federal investigation," I suggested, introducing the idea that would ultimately accelerate the timeline for revealing my hidden documentation while creating legal frameworks that would protect my interests during the family confrontation that was rapidly approaching. "Yes, but first we need to secure any remaining assets and document exactly what was taken," he replied, moving toward his desk to begin the crisis management protocols that had served him throughout decades of business challenge. The next 3 hours unfolded with the controlled urgency that characterizes emergency response among successful professionals. Marcus contacted federal authorities, security consultants, and legal advisors while maintaining the composure that had enabled him to build Sterling Capital into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. However, the investigation process created opportunities for strategic information gathering that would prove essential for my revelation strategy. FBI agents specializing in high-value theft cases arrived to document the crime scene and interview family members about potential suspects, access opportunities, and motivations for targeting the Sterling family specifically. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez conducted my interview with the thorough professionalism that federal investigations require, asking detailed questions about the inheritance story, my recent activities, and any individuals who might have known about the presence of substantial cash in our family safe. "Ms. Sterling, the amount involved suggests either sophisticated criminal organization or someone with intimate knowledge of your family's security arrangements," Agent Martinez explained during our conversation. "Can you think of anyone who might have learned about the inheritance and the decision to store cash in your father's safe?" The question provided the perfect opportunity to introduce information about Sophia's knowledge and access, while avoiding direct accusation that might complicate the legal processes I was engineering to support my broader strategy. "My sister Sophia knew about the inheritance because she was present during our family discussion about investment strategies," I replied. "She has access to our father's office and safe because of her position at Sterling Capital and her involvement in family financial planning." "When did you last see your sister?" 3 days ago, at dinner here at the house. She seemed interested in the investment planning process and offered advice about managing large amounts of capital." Agent Martinez made detailed notes while maintaining the neutral expression that federal investigators use to avoid revealing investigative direction or suspicions. However, her follow-up questions focused increasingly on Sophia's knowledge, access, and recent behavior patterns. "Has your sister exhibited any unusual financial pressures or concerns recently?" The question touched on information I possessed through my hidden monitoring of Sterling Capital's internal operations and Sophia's personal financial situation. My investment analysis capabilities had enabled me to understand family finances far more comprehensively than any family member realized, including Sophia's debt obligations and spending patterns that created financial pressure despite her substantial corporate salary. "Sophia has mentioned concerns about student loans and lifestyle expenses that exceed her current income level," I replied truthfully. She works hard at Sterling Capital, but she has expensive preferences for travel, fashion, and entertainment that sometimes create cash flow challenges. This information was accurate and discoverable through standard financial investigations, but my knowledge of these details would surprise family members who assumed I remained unaware of practical financial realities due to my supposed focus on artistic pursuits rather than monetary considerations. The interview process continued for 2 additional hours, during which I provided comprehensive information about family dynamics, recent conversations, and potential motives, while carefully avoiding any disclosure that might reveal my hidden financial expertise or the elaborate planning that had created the current situation. Agent Martinez concluded the interview with standard protocols about ongoing investigation requirements and potential testimony if suspects were identified and prosecuted. However, her questions had already established the investigative framework that would ultimately lead to Sophia's discovery and legal consequences for her action. More importantly, the federal investigation was creating documentary evidence and legal precedents that would support my eventual revelation of hidden assets while providing legal protection for the wealth I had accumulated through 15 years of concealed investment activity. By afternoon, the immediate crisis management had evolved into strategic planning for addressing both the theft itself and its potential impact on Sterling Capital's reputation and operation. Marcus called an emergency family meeting to coordinate response efforts while beginning the process of financial impact assessment and recovery planning. The meeting convened in our family's formal dining room with participants including Marcus, myself, our mother Catherine, and senior Sterling Capital executives who required briefing about potential security implications for the firm's operation. Sophia's absence was conspicuous and increasingly suspicious as hours passed without any communication from her. The investigation is proceeding, but we need to consider the broader implications of this incident. Marcus began with the authoritative tone he used for serious business discussion. $50 million represents substantial loss, but more concerning is the security breach that enabled access to our family safe. The conversation that followed revealed family assumptions and blind spots that had enabled my deception while creating vulnerabilities that my revelation strategy was designed to address. Each family member's response demonstrated their limited understanding of both financial security and the psychological factors that motivated individual behavior within family systems. Catherine expressed concern primarily about personal safety and the possibility that external criminals might target other family members or assets. Her focus remained on physical security rather than the financial analysis that would identify Sophia as the most likely suspect based on knowledge, access, and motivation. Should we increase security for all family members until the criminals are identified? She asked. If they were sophisticated enough to access Marcus's safe, they might attempt additional crimes against our family. Sterling Capital executives focused on potential reputational impact and client confidence issues that might arise if news of the theft became public knowledge. Their concerns centered on maintaining institutional credibility rather than identifying internal threats or addressing family security weaknesses. Client confidence depends on perception of sound risk management and security protocols, explained David Chen, Sterling Capital's chief operating officer. We need to ensure that this incident does not raise questions about our ability to protect client assets or maintain operational security. The discussion continued for 3 hours without anyone directly addressing the obvious possibility that Sophia's simultaneous disappearance and the theft timing represented more than coincidental correlation. The family's psychological resistance to considering internal betrayal was creating exactly the blind spot that my strategy had anticipated and required for successful implementation. However, the meeting also revealed information about Sterling Capital's current financial position and operational challenges that provided crucial context for the business analysis I would eventually present to demonstrate my hidden expertise and strategic value. Marcus disclosed the firm was facing its most challenging competitive environment in over 2 decades, with client departures accelerating and new business development declining significantly. Traditional investment approaches that had driven Sterling Capital's historical success were becoming less effective as client preferences shifted toward firms offering more innovative strategies and better understanding of emerging market opportunities. We are maintaining profitability and client satisfaction, but growth has stagnated and several major accounts have indicated interest in alternative investment approaches that we do not currently offer. Marcus admitted during the confidential discussion, "The industry is changing faster than our traditional strategies can adapt." This disclosure confirmed the analysis I had developed through my hidden monitoring of competitive trends and client behavior patterns. Sterling Capital was indeed positioned for gradual decline unless fundamental adaptations were implemented to address changing market conditions and client expectations. More significantly, Marcus's willingness to discuss these challenges during a family crisis meeting indicated that he was beginning to recognize the severity of Sterling Capital's strategic position and his need for innovative solutions that transcended traditional financial industry approaches. The timing was perfect for introducing the alternative perspective and analytical capabilities that I had developed through 15 years of hidden investment work. However, the revelation required careful orchestration to maximize strategic impact while maintaining legal and psychological advantages. As the meeting progressed toward evening, federal investigators contacted our family with preliminary findings that confirmed my expectations about the investigation's direction and timeline. Agent Martinez requested another family meeting to discuss evidence that suggested internal involvement in the theft. Based on security analysis and forensic evidence, we believe someone with detailed knowledge of your family's security arrangements and access to the safe was responsible for the theft, she explained during the phone conversation with Mark. We need to interview all family members again and review any recent changes in behavior or circumstances that might be relevant. The announcement created the psychological pressure necessary for advancing my revelation strategy while providing legal frameworks that would protect my interest during the family confrontation that was now inevitable. Marcus's response to the federal findings revealed his growing recognition that family assumptions about loyalty and trustworthiness might have been naive and potentially costly. For the first time since the theft discovery, he began considering the possibility that someone within our family circle had engineered the entire situation. If someone we trusted was responsible for this theft, the implications extend far beyond the financial loss, he said during our private conversation after the federal call concluded. Family betrayal damages relationships that cannot be easily repaired or replaced. His comment provided the perfect opening for introducing the themes that would dominate the revelation process as my hidden documentation was disclosed and family understanding of capability, contribution, and deception was fundamentally altered. The federal investigation accelerated dramatically when technological analysis of the safe's security system revealed evidence of sophisticated internal access rather than external criminal activity. Digital forensics demonstrated that the safe had been opened using proper codes and procedures rather than forced entry techniques, indicating that someone with legitimate access had conducted the theft. More damaging for Sophia's position, security cameras from neighboring properties and financial transaction monitoring had tracked her movements and activities during the critical time frame when the theft occurred. By the second day of investigation, federal agents had sufficient evidence to issue arrest warrants and begin international asset recovery proceedings. Agent Martinez contacted our family with updates that confirmed Sophia's responsibility while revealing the extent of her planning and the sophistication of her escape strategy. The theft had not been impulsive opportunism but rather calculated financial crime that involved offshore accounts, false identification, and predetermined exit strategy. Your sister executed a professional-level theft that required months of planning and preparation, Agent Martinez explained during the briefing session. She established offshore accounts, arranged false documentation for international travel, and coordinated asset transfer systems that suggest significant financial knowledge and criminal planning experience. The revelation that Sophia had planned the theft extensively while maintaining normal family relationships and professional responsibilities created psychological shock that went beyond the financial impact of the stolen money. Marcus and Catherine struggled to reconcile their understanding of Sophia as a successful Sterling Capital executive with evidence of elaborate criminal planning and family betrayal. How could she plan something this sophisticated while working at Sterling Capital and participating in family activities? Catherine asked with the bewilderment of someone whose fundamental assumptions about family loyalty had been shattered. She had dinner with us 3 days ago and seemed completely normal,
Agent Martinez's response provided insight into criminal psychology that would prove relevant for understanding the complex motivations and capabilities that family members often concealed from each other. Financial crimes within families often involve years of hidden resentment and planning, she explained. Perpetrators maintain normal relationships while secretly developing criminal strategy. The emotional detachment required for family betrayal typically develops gradually through rationalization processes that justify theft as compensation for perceived unfairness. The psychological analysis resonated with my understanding of family dynamics and individual motivations that had enabled my own 15-year deception. The difference between Sophia's criminal planning and my legitimate investment activities was primarily moral rather than methodological. Both approaches required concealing capabilities, maintaining false narratives, and manipulating family perceptions to achieve hidden objectives. However, the federal investigation was creating legal and practical pressures that required accelerated revelation of my hidden assets and documentation. Asset recovery proceedings would eventually require comprehensive disclosure of family financial positions, and my concealed wealth would inevitably be discovered through forensic accounting process. The strategic choice was between controlled revelation that demonstrated my capabilities while protecting my interests, or passive discovery that would raise questions about my own deception and potentially compromise the legal advantages I had carefully constructed. I chose controlled revelation through strategic discovery of the hidden compartment that contained documentation of my actual financial position and investment expertise. Agent Martinez, I want to check something in the safe that might be relevant to understanding the full scope of what happened, I announced during the family briefing session. When I placed the inheritance money in the safe, I noticed some structural irregularities that seemed unusual for a security device of this quality. The statement created immediate attention from both federal investigators and family members, while providing plausible explanation for discovering the hidden compartment without revealing my foreknowledge of its existence. What kind of irregularity? Agent Martinez asked with the focused attention that federal investigators apply to potentially significant evidence. Subtle variations in the internal dimensions that suggested possible modifications or secondary storage areas, I replied, moving toward the safe with apparent curiosity rather than certain knowledge. I did not investigate thoroughly at the time because I was focused on securing the inheritance money, but the theft makes me wonder if the safe's capabilities were more complex than we realized. The search process that followed required careful performance to maintain credibility while ensuring discovery of the hidden compartment and its content. I guided the investigation through apparently random examination of the safe's internal structure until the secondary mechanism was activated and the concealed storage area was revealed. The moment when the hidden compartment opened and its contents became visible marked the culmination of 15 years of planning and the beginning of a family transformation that would permanently alter relationships, expectations, and understanding of capability and contribution. The compartment contained meticulously organized documentation that established my actual financial position while demonstrating the investment expertise I had developed through hidden research and practical application. Account statements showing $60 million in total assets, transaction histories revealing sophisticated analytical frameworks, and legal documents proving ownership of substantial wealth that my family believed did not exist. More importantly, the compartment included comprehensive analysis of Sterling Capital's competitive challenges and detailed strategic recommendations for addressing the market developments that were threatening the firm's continued success. Agent Martinez examined the documentation with the systematic thoroughness that federal investigations require, while my family members processed the revelation that their understanding of my financial capabilities and professional contributions had been fundamentally incorrect for over a decade. These documents establish ownership of substantial assets and demonstrate sophisticated financial expertise, Agent Martinez concluded after preliminary review. The account statements and transaction records appear legitimate and properly documented according to standard financial industry protocol. Marcus took the documentation with hands that trembled slightly as he confronted evidence that challenged every assumption he had maintained about his daughter's capabilities and contributions for 15. Victoria, This shows assets totaling nearly $60 million, he said slowly, his voice reflecting the psychological disorientation that occurs when fundamental beliefs are contradicted by irrefutable evidence. How is this possible? How did you accumulate this wealth while we believed you were struggling as an artist? The question that I had anticipated and prepared for throughout 15 years of hidden work represented the moment when careful deception would be transformed into strategic revelation, when family understanding would be permanently altered, and when the true scope of my capabilities would finally be recognized and acknowledged. The answer would require explaining not just the mechanics of hidden investment success, but the psychological and strategic factors that had motivated 15 years of elaborate deception while my family remained convinced that I was failing as an artist rather than succeeding as an investor whose performance exceeded their own professional achievement. I have been conducting investment research and building wealth through cultural trend analysis while maintaining the appearance of struggling with artistic career development, I replied, beginning the explanation that would transform our family relationships while demonstrating capabilities that could save sterling capital from the decline that traditional approaches would inevitably create. The revelation process had begun, and for the first time in 15 years, the truth about my hidden empire was emerging from the shadow. The silence that followed my initial revelation stretched across the study like a physical presence, heavy with the accumulated weight of 15 years of carefully maintained deception, now crumbling under the force of irrefutable documentation. Marcus Sterling stood motionless beside his violated safe, clutching portfolio statements that demonstrated his daughter possessed nearly $60 million in professionally managed assets, while he had believed she could barely afford rent on her modest studio apartment. The psychological impact of discovering that fundamental assumptions about family members can be completely wrong creates a disorientation that extends far beyond simple surprise or disappointment. When successful individuals who have built their careers on accurate assessment of people and situations confront evidence that their judgment has been systematically incorrect for over a decade, the resulting cognitive disruption challenges not just specific beliefs but entire frameworks for understanding competence, relationships, and reality itself. Marcus lowered himself into his leather chair with the careful movements of someone whose physical stability has been compromised by emotional shock. His face reflected the particular expression that appears when intelligent people realize they have been profoundly mistaken about circumstances they believed they understood completely. $60 million, he repeated slowly, his voice carrying the tone of someone attempting to process information that contradicted every assumption he had maintained about his daughter's capabilities and circumstance. You accumulated $60 million while we believed you were struggling to sell paintings for a few $100s each. Catherine moved to stand behind her husband's chair, her own expression reflecting similar disorientation as she processed the implications of documentation that proved their artistic daughter had achieved financial success that exceeded most professional investors while maintaining the appearance of creative struggle and economic dependence. Victoria, I do not understand how this was possible, she said with the careful articulation that people use when attempting to maintain composure during emotionally overwhelming situations. We have supported you financially for 15 years because we believed you needed assistance. How could you have accumulated this wealth without our knowledge? The questions they were asking revealed the depth of their confusion and the challenge that my revelation created for their understanding of family relationships, individual capability, and the nature of success itself. Their framework for evaluating achievement was built around visible accomplishments, traditional career paths, and direct correlation between effort and recognition. The concept that substantial success could be achieved through hidden methods while maintaining the appearance of failure challenged assumptions that extended far beyond my specific situation. Agent Martinez observed our family interaction with the professional detachment that federal investigators maintain during emotionally charged situations, but her attention remained focused on the legal and procedural implications of discovering substantial undeclared assets during a theft investigation.
Ms. Sterling, these financial documents will require verification through your investment institutions and accounting professionals. she explained with the systematic thoroughness that characterizes federal financial investigations. The discovery of substantial assets that were not disclosed during initial interviews raises questions about potential tax implications and regulatory compliance that we need to address. Her statement introduced complications that I had anticipated and prepared for throughout my 15-year investment strategy. All of my financial activities had been conducted in full compliance with applicable laws and regulations, with proper documentation and tax reporting, maintained through professional accounting services that specialized in complex investment structures and privacy protection. All of my investment activities have been conducted through licensed financial institutions with proper legal and tax compliance, I replied, producing additional documentation from the hidden compartment that established the legitimate nature of my financial activity. I can provide complete records of all transactions, tax filings, and regulatory compliance documentation. The legal framework I had maintained would withstand federal scrutiny while demonstrating that my financial success had been achieved through legitimate investment strategies rather than criminal activity or regulatory violation. More importantly, the professional structure of my investment activities would validate my expertise while protecting my assets during the family confrontation that was now accelerating rapidly. Marcus began examining the transaction records with the systematic approach he applied to complex financial analysis, his professional expertise enabling him to understand the sophistication of the investment strategies that had generated my wealth. As he reviewed the documentation, his expression shifted from confusion toward recognition of capabilities that contradicted everything he believed about my financial knowledge and analytical ability. These investment selections demonstrate advanced understanding of market analysis and risk management, he said with growing awareness of the implication. The portfolio construction shows sophisticated knowledge of asset allocation, diversification strategies, and timing decisions that require substantial expertise and experience. His professional assessment was validating my investment capabilities while simultaneously forcing him to confront the reality that his daughter possessed financial expertise that he had never recognized or suspected. The cognitive dissonance created by discovering that someone he had dismissed as financially naive actually demonstrated superior investment performance challenged his understanding of competence evaluation and family dynamics. The returns documented in these statements exceed market benchmarks consistently over 15 years, he continued, his voice reflecting the particular tone that financial professionals use when acknowledging exceptional performance. Average annual returns of 18% with controlled volatility indicate analytical capabilities and risk management expertise that most institutional investors never achieve. Catherine listened to her husband's technical analysis with growing recognition that their understanding of their daughter's capabilities had been fundamentally flawed for over a decade. The implications extended beyond financial matters to encompass questions about judgment, communication, and the nature of family relationships that had been built on incomplete and inaccurate information. Victoria, if you possessed this level of financial expertise, why did you not share it with us? She asked with the hurt that family members experience when discovering they have been excluded from important aspects of someone's life. We could have supported your investment activities instead of worrying about your financial security. The question touched on the complex motivations and psychological factors that had driven my decision to maintain hidden financial activities while accepting family support and concern that I knew was based on inaccurate assumptions about my circumstances and capability. The explanation that my family required involved more than simple description of investment strategies and financial results. They needed to understand the psychological and strategic factors that had motivated 15 years of elaborate deception, the institutional barriers that had influenced my career choices, and the complex relationship between artistic insight and financial analysis that had enabled my investment success. I began conducting investment research during my university studies because I discovered that cultural trend analysis could identify market opportunities that traditional financial analysis overlooked, I explained, beginning the comprehensive account that would help them understand how artistic training had provided competitive advantages in investment strategy development. Cultural movements, demographic shifts, and psychological patterns that influence consumer behavior often become apparent through artistic communities and creative industries before they affect broader economic indicators. Understanding these patterns provided early identification of investment opportunities that traditional approaches missed completely. Marcus leaned forward with the focused attention he applied to strategic analysis, his professional curiosity overcoming his personal confusion as he began to recognize the analytical framework that had driven my investment success. "You identified investment opportunities through cultural trend analysis?" he asked, his tone reflecting growing recognition of the innovative approach I had developed. "Can you provide specific examples of how artistic insight translated to financial opportunity identification?" The request provided the opportunity to demonstrate the sophisticated analytical methodology I had developed while explaining why maintaining secrecy had been strategically necessary for preserving access to the cultural information that enabled my investment success. "Digital art platforms represented one of my earliest successful analyses," I replied, producing documentation that showed the progression from cultural observation to investment implementation and subsequent return. Through my involvement in artistic communities, I observed increasing interest in virtual reality applications and digital content creation that suggested fundamental shifts in how artistic content would be produced and monetized. Traditional art market participants dismissed these developments as technological novelties, but my analysis indicated they represented the early stages of transformation that would eventually affect entertainment, education, marketing, and social interaction industry. I identified 3 publicly traded companies positioned to benefit from digital creative platform expansion and invested accordingly. The documentation showed initial investment of $15,000 that had grown to over $60,000 within 4 months, as broader market recognition of digital art opportunities developed, validating both my analytical framework and my implementation capability. The psychological factors that drive artistic appreciation were increasingly being expressed through digital mediums, creating opportunities for companies that could effectively serve emerging preferences. I continue. Understanding cultural psychology provided competitive advantages that traditional financial analysis could not replicate. Marcus studied the investment records with the systematic thoroughness he applied to complex strategic analysis, his professional expertise enabling him to recognize the sophistication of the approach while understanding why such methodology would be difficult to implement within traditional financial industry structure. This analytical framework requires access to cultural communities and artistic networks that institutional investors typically do not maintain, he observed with growing appreciation for the innovative approach I had developed. "Your position within artistic circles provided information access that enabled competitive advantages over traditional investment approach." His recognition of my strategic advantages was validating while simultaneously highlighting the institutional limitations that had influenced my decision to pursue independent investment activities, rather than working within established financial industry framework. Institutional investment approaches emphasize quantitative analysis and established methodologies that would not have accommodated the cultural research and artistic community involvement that my strategy required, I explained. Maintaining my position as an independent artist preserved access to information sources, while providing the flexibility to develop unconventional analytical approach. Catherine began to understand the complex strategic considerations that had influenced my career choices, while recognizing that her concerns about financial security had been based on incomplete information about my actual circumstances and capabilities. "You chose to appear financially unsuccessful in order to maintain access to artistic communities that provided investment information," she asked, her tone reflecting growing awareness of the sophisticated planning that had driven my decision. Revealing financial success would have altered my relationships within artistic communities and potentially limited access to the cultural information that enabled my analytical advantages. The investment strategy required maintaining authentic connections with creative professionals who might have responded differently if they knew I was using their cultural insights for financial gain. The psychological complexity of maintaining dual identities for strategic purposes was something my family had not previously considered. but they were beginning to recognize that my choices had been driven by sophisticated analysis rather than simple deception or family avoidance. Agent Martinez continued her examination of the financial documentation while monitoring our family conversation for information relevant to the theft investigation and asset recovery proceeding. Her professional focus remained on legal and procedural matters, but she was also observing family dynamics that would influence her understanding of the overall situation. Sterling, your investment activities and asset accumulation appear legitimate and properly documented, she concluded after completing her preliminary review. However, the discovery of substantial undisclosed assets during a theft investigation requires comprehensive verification and coordination with financial crimes units that specialize in complex asset cases. Her statement introduced procedural requirements that would ultimately benefit my strategic position by providing federal validation of my financial activities while creating legal frameworks that would protect my assets during ongoing family discussions and potential Sterling capital integration. The investigation was evolving from simple theft recovery toward comprehensive financial analysis that would ultimately demonstrate my capabilities, while providing opportunities for strategic revelation of the business analysis I had developed regarding Sterling Capital's competitive challenges and potential solutions. The federal investigation procedures created natural opportunities for revealing the comprehensive analysis I had developed regarding Sterling Capital's strategic position and the market developments that were threatening the firm's continued success. Agent Martinez's requirements for complete financial disclosure included review of all investment research and business analysis that had informed my asset allocation decision. The documentation includes analysis of various industries and companies that informed your investment strategies, Agent Martinez observed while reviewing the materials from the hidden compartment. Some of this research appears to focus specifically on financial services industry trends and competitive dynamics. Her statement provided the opening I required for introducing the Sterling Capital analysis that would demonstrate my capability to contribute meaningfully to the family business, while revealing the extent of my hidden monitoring of their operations and competitive environment. Part of my research involved analyzing the financial services industry to understand how cultural and demographic shifts were affecting client preferences and investment approaches, I explained. Producing the comprehensive report I had prepared regarding Sterling Capital's strategic challenges and potential solutions, I developed detailed analysis of how generational wealth transfer and changing client expectations were creating competitive pressures for traditional investment firms, including Sterling Capital. Marcus received the business analysis with the focused attention he applied to strategic planning documents, his professional expertise enabling him to immediately recognize the sophistication and accuracy of the research, while understanding its direct relevance to challenges that Sterling Capital was currently facing. The report documented declining client retention, reduced new business development, and competitive disadvantages that resulted from Sterling Capital's continued focus on traditional investment approaches, while client preferences shifted toward firms offering more innovative strategies and better understanding of emerging market opportunities. More significantly, the analysis included specific recommendations for addressing these challenges through integration of cultural trend analysis, enhanced understanding of demographic transition, and development of investment approaches that could serve changing client needs while maintaining the firm's reputation for conservative risk management. This analysis accurately describes competitive pressures that we have been experiencing over the past 2 years, Marcus said, with growing recognition of my analytical capabilities and their potential application to Sterling Capital's strategic development. The recommendations address specific challenges that our traditional approaches have been unable to resolve effectively. The business analysis demonstrated that my cultural trend methodology could provide competitive advantages for Sterling Capital, while addressing the client retention and new business development challenges that were threatening the firm's continued growth and market position. Generational wealth transfer is creating opportunities for investment firms that can effectively serve emerging client preferences, while firms that remain focused on traditional approaches will face continued decline in relevance and market share, I explained, outlining the strategic framework I had developed for modernizing Sterling Capital's service offerings. Understanding cultural trends and psychological factors that influence investment decision-making provides competitive advantages that traditional financial analysis cannot replicate. Sterling Capital could differentiate itself through integration of these approaches while maintaining the conservative risk management that has defined the firm's reputation. Marcus studied the strategic recommendations with the systematic thoroughness he applied to major business decisions, his professional expertise enabling him to recognize both the accuracy of the problem identification and the practical applicability of the proposed solution. These recommendations could address fundamental challenges that we have been struggling to resolve through traditional strategic planning approaches. He acknowledged with growing appreciation for my analytical capabilities and their potential contribution to Sterling Capital's continued success. Catherine observed her husband's professional engagement with my business analysis while processing the broader implications of discovering that their artistic daughter possessed expertise that could benefit the family business in ways they had never considered possible. Victoria has been analyzing our business challenges while we believed she was struggling with her art career. She asked with the amazement that family members experience when discovering hidden capabilities that directly address problems they have been facing. I have been monitoring Sterling Capital's competitive position and developing strategic recommendations because I recognized that cultural and demographic changes were creating challenges that traditional approaches could not address effectively. I explained. The same analytical framework that enabled my investment success could provide competitive advantages for the family business. The revelation that my hidden research extended beyond personal wealth building to include comprehensive analysis of Sterling Capital's strategic needs demonstrates that my capabilities could contribute to family business success while addressing the competitive pressures that Marcus had been struggling to resolve through conventional methods. Agent Martinez completed her review of the business analysis while maintaining focus on the legal and procedural requirements of the ongoing investigation. But she was also observing family dynamics that would influence the resolution of both the theft case and the broader questions about asset disclosure and family relationships. The documentation demonstrates comprehensive research and analysis capabilities that appear legitimate and professionally developed, she concluded. The business analysis and investment research show sophisticated understanding of financial markets and strategic planning that would be relevant to various legal and business applications. Her professional validation of my analytical capabilities provided additional credibility for the family discussion, while establishing legal recognition of my expertise that would support potential integration of my strategic recommendations into Sterling Capital's operational planning. Marcus began to recognize that the discovery of my hidden capabilities represented not just personal revelation, but potential strategic opportunity for addressing Sterling Capital's competitive challenges through innovative approaches that traditional industry frameworks had not provided. Victoria, if your analytical capabilities can address the competitive pressures that Sterling Capital has been facing, we need to discuss how these approaches could be integrated into our strategic planning process, he said with the decisive tone he used for important business decisions. The statement represented the first acknowledgement that my capabilities could contribute meaningfully to Sterling Capital's continued success while validating the strategic value of the analytical framework I had developed through 15 years of hidden research and practical application. The conversation was evolving from personal revelation toward business strategy discussion that would ultimately transform both family relationships and Sterling Capital's competitive position through integration of innovative approaches that my cultural trend analysis could provide. The foundation had been established for revealing not just my hidden wealth, but my potential contribution to the family business legacy that Marcus had spent decades building and that traditional approaches were proving inadequate to sustain in changing market conditions. The next phase required demonstrating how my analytical capabilities could be applied to Sterling Capital's specific challenges while negotiating the terms for family and business integration that would acknowledge my expertise while protecting the strategic advantages I had developed through years of in-depth research and investment success. The transformation of family dynamics that followed the revelation of my hidden capabilities created unprecedented opportunities for strategic business discussion,
while simultaneously challenging established patterns of authority and decision-making that had defined Sterling Capital for 3 generations. Marcus Sterling, who had built his career on precise evaluation of talent and opportunity, found himself confronting the reality that his most valuable analytical resource had been operating within his own family while he remained completely unaware of her capability. The morning following the discovery of my documentation, Marcus requested a formal business meeting to assess the practical applications of my analytical framework to Sterling Capital's strategic challenges. The meeting would be conducted with the same professional rigor that characterized all significant business decisions at the firm, establishing clear parameters for evaluating my potential contribution, while maintaining appropriate boundaries between family relationships and corporate responsibility. Victoria, your analysis of industry trends and competitive dynamics demonstrates sophisticated understanding of the challenges we face. Marcus began with the measured tone he used for important strategic discussion. However, transitioning from independent research to operational implementation within an established firm requires different capabilities and considerations that we need to evaluate systematically. His approach reflected the careful balance between acknowledging my demonstrated expertise and maintaining the institutional standards that had enabled Sterling Capital to build client trust and regulatory compliance over decades of operation. The integration of innovative analytical approaches would need to occur within existing frameworks, while enhancing rather than disrupting the firm's established operational excellence. David Chen, Sterling Capital's Chief Operating Officer, joined the meeting to provide institutional perspective on the practical requirements for integrating new analytical capabilities into existing investment processes and client service protocol. His presence signaled that the discussion had moved beyond family revelation toward serious consideration of business strategy implementation. The cultural trend analysis that you have described represents a significant departure from our traditional quantitative approaches, David observed with the systematic assessment that characterized his evaluation of operational change. Integration would require developing new research methodologies, client communication protocols, and performance measurement systems that could accommodate both traditional and innovative analytical frameworks. The operational considerations that David identified highlighted the complexity of implementing my analytical approach within Sterling Capital's established infrastructure while maintaining the consistency and reliability that institutional clients expected from their investment advisor. However, the business challenges that Sterling Capital was facing created urgent need for innovative solutions that could address client retention issues and competitive pressures that traditional approaches had proven unable to resolve effectively. The timing of my revelation coincided perfectly with strategic necessity that made experimental approaches more acceptable than they would have been during periods of stable growth. Our client demographics are shifting as generational wealth transfer accelerates and younger investors assume control of family assets, Marcus acknowledged with the directness he applied to significant business challenge. Traditional investment approaches that satisfied previous generations may not meet the expectations and preferences of emerging client segments. His assessment confirmed the accuracy of my market analysis while establishing the business case for exploring innovative approaches that could serve evolving client needs without compromising the conservative risk management principles that had defined Sterling Capital's reputation and competitive position. The discussion proceeded with systematic evaluation of specific opportunities for applying cultural trend analysis to Sterling Capital's investment selection processes, client relationship management, and new business development initiative. Each application required careful consideration of implementation requirements, performance measurement criteria, and integration strategies that could enhance existing capabilities while minimizing operational disruption. Emerging technology sectors represent areas where cultural trend analysis could provide significant competitive advantages, presenting specific examples of how artistic community observations had enabled early identification of investment opportunities that traditional financial analysis had initially overlooked. Virtual reality applications, digital content creation platforms, and social interaction technologies often demonstrate adoption patterns within creative communities before achieving broader market recognition. Understanding these patterns provides timing advantages for investment selection and risk management that quantitative analysis alone cannot replicate. Marcus and David examined the documentation I provided with the thorough analysis they applied to all potential strategy modifications. Their professional expertise enabling them to recognize the practical applications while understanding the implementation challenges that would require systematic addressing. The performance results you have achieved through independent application of this methodology's significant potential for institutional implementation, David concluded, after reviewing the investment record. However, scaling from individual portfolio management to institutional client service requires operational infrastructure and regulatory compliance capabilities that we would need to develop systematically. His assessment identified the path forward for integrating my analytical capabilities into Sterling Capital's operations while maintaining the institutional standards that clients expected and regulatory authorities require. The development process would need to occur gradually and systematically to ensure successful implementation without compromising existing client relationships or operational excellence. The business discussion continued throughout the morning as we developed preliminary frameworks for testing my analytical approaches within controlled environments that could demonstrate effectiveness while minimizing risk to Sterling Capital's established operations and client relations. Strategic planning process that emerged from our initial business discussions required comprehensive development of implementation protocols that could integrate cultural trend analysis into Sterling Capital's existing investment processes while maintaining the firm's reputation for risk management and consistent performance delivery. Marcus and David collaborated with me to design a systematic approach that would test my analytical methodology through limited application to specific investment sectors and client segments where innovative approaches could provide competitive advantages without compromising overall portfolio stability or institutional credibility. We will establish a specialized research division focused on emerging market opportunities that can benefit from cultural trend analysis, Marcus announced, outlining the organizational structure that would accommodate my analytical approach while preserving Sterling Capital's traditional investment capability. This division will operate with dedicated resources and separate performance measurement criteria that can demonstrate effectiveness while maintaining appropriate separation from our established client portfolios and investment strategy. The implementation plan reflected sophisticated understanding of institutional change management while acknowledging the significant potential benefits that my analytical capabilities could provide for Sterling Capital's competitive position and long-term strategic development. David assumed responsibility for developing the operational infrastructure required to support the new research division, including technology systems, regulatory compliance protocol and performance measurement frameworks that could accommodate innovative analytical approaches while meeting institutional standards for documentation and accountability. Cultural trend analysis requires different data sources and research methodologies than traditional quantitative approaches, David explained while outlining the system's development requirements. We need to establish information gathering processes, analytical software capabilities, and reporting systems that can support your research approach while integrating with existing investment decision-making process. The infrastructure development would require several months of systematic planning and implementation, but the timeline aligned with Sterling Capital's strategic planning cycle while providing opportunities for gradual integration that could minimize operational disruption and client communication challenge. My role within the new research division would combine analytical responsibility with client education and business development activities that could demonstrate the practical benefits of cultural trend analysis while building market recognition for Sterling Capital's innovative capability.
Your ability to communicate the connection between cultural trends and investment opportunities will be essential for client acceptance and competitive differentiation, Marcus observed with recognition of the marketing and relationship management requirements that would accompany the analytical work. Institutional clients need to understand how innovative approaches enhance rather than replace traditional risk management while providing access to opportunities that conventional analysis might miss. The client education component would require developing presentation materials and communication strategies that could explain complex analytical concepts in terms that sophisticated investors could understand and appreciate without compromising the proprietary aspects of my research methodology. Throughout the implementation planning process, we maintained focus on preserving the strategic advantages that my independent research had provided, while scaling those capabilities to institutional application that could benefit Sterling Capital's competitive position and client service excellence. The integration strategy represented a sophisticated approach to institutional innovation that balanced experimental development with operational stability while creating opportunities for competitive differentiation that could address the market challenges threatening Sterling Capital's continued growth and success. The business planning discussions that occupied our professional attention were accompanied by equally important personal conversations about family relationships and the psychological impact of discovering that fundamental assumptions about individual capabilities and contributions had been systematically incorrect for over 15 years. Catherine Sterling struggled to reconcile her understanding of maternal support and family responsibility with the revelation that her daughter had achieved extraordinary financial success while accepting assistance based on deliberately maintained misconception about her actual circumstances and capabilities. Victoria, I understand why you maintained secrecy about your investment activities for strategic reasons, she said during a private conversation about the family implications of my revelation. However, accepting financial support from your father while possessing substantial personal wealth creates ethical questions that we need to address honestly. Her concern was legitimate and reflected the complex moral considerations that arose from my strategic deception, particularly regarding the financial assistance that my family had provided, based on their belief that I required support for basic living expenses and professional development. The total amount of family financial support over 15 years was approximately $200,000, representing a significant sum that I had accepted, while possessing assets that far exceeded the Sterling family's assumptions about my financial needs or capability. I accepted family support because refusing it would have raised questions about my financial situation that could have compromised the strategic advantages I was developing through my independent research. I explained acknowledging the ethical complexity while defending the strategic necessity that had motivated my decision. The analytical framework that enabled my investment success required maintaining authentic relationships within artistic communities that might have been affected if my actual financial position had been known. Catherine listened to my explanation with the careful attention she applied to complex family situations, while processing the broader implications for trust, communication, and the foundation of family relationships that had been built on incomplete information for over a decade. I understand the strategic considerations, but the impact on family trust and communication creates challenges that require honest acknowledgement and commitment to different approaches moving forward, she replied with the wisdom that comes from decades of managing complex family dynamics. Her response established the framework for rebuilding family relationships based on authentic communication, while acknowledging the strategic factors that had influenced my previous choices and the institutional pressures that would continue to affect my professional activity. Marcus approached the family reconciliation process with the systematic analysis he applied to complex business challenges, recognizing that sustainable solutions required understanding the motivations and constraints that had influenced individual decisions, while establishing new frameworks that could accommodate everyone's legitimate interests and concerns. The financial support we provided was based on our assessment of your needs and circumstances, he said during a family meeting convened to address the personal implications of my revelation. Discovering that our assessment was incorrect raises questions about communication, but it also demonstrates capabilities that can benefit our family's business interests moving forward. His ability to separate personal hurt from strategic opportunity reflected the professional discipline that had enabled him to build Sterling Capital while maintaining focus on solutions rather than becoming paralyzed by problems or blame. The family reconciliation process required acknowledging mistakes and misunderstandings, while establishing commitments to more open communication that could support both personal relationships and business collaboration, without compromising the strategic advantages that innovative approaches could provide. We need to establish communication protocols that can accommodate legitimate confidentiality requirements, while ensuring that family relationships are based on honest information about circumstances and capabilities. Catherine concluded, outlining the framework for family interaction that could support both personal authenticity and professional effectiveness. The agreements we reached during these discussions created foundation for family relationships that could integrate personal support with business collaboration, respecting the complex requirements of competitive strategy and institutional responsibility that would continue to influence our professional activity. The development of Sterling Capital's new research division and the integration of cultural trend analysis into the firm's investment capabilities created immediate competitive advantages that began attracting client attention and market recognition within months of implementation. The timing coincided perfectly with broader industry discussions about the need for innovative approaches that could serve changing client demographics and investment preferences. Financial industry publications began featuring articles about Sterling Capital's unique analytical capabilities, the superior performance results that cultural trend analysis was generating for clients who participated in the experimental portfolios that tested my methodology under controlled conditions. Sterling Capital Pioneers Cultural Investment Analysis appeared as the headline story in Investment Management Weekly, describing the firm's innovative approach to identifying emerging opportunities through artistic community observation and psychological pattern recognition that traditional quantitative analysis often overlooks. The media attention created marketing advantages that exceeded our initial expectations, while establishing Sterling Capital's reputation as an institutional leader in developing next-generation investment strategies that could serve evolving client needs and preferences. More significantly, competitive differentiation enabled Sterling Capital to reverse the client retention challenges that had threatened the firm's growth trajectory, while attracting new business from sophisticated investors who recognized the value of innovative analytical approaches that could enhance traditional risk management frameworks. Client response has exceeded projections across all demographic segments, David reported during quarterly business review meetings that tracked the new research division's performance and market impact. Both existing clients and prospective investors have demonstrated strong interest in portfolio strategies that integrate cultural trend analysis with traditional investment approaches. The business results validated the strategic decision to integrate my analytical capabilities, demonstrating that Sterling Capital could successfully implement innovative approaches without compromising the conservative risk management principles that had defined the firm's reputation and competitive position. The success also created opportunities for expanding the cultural trend analysis methodology to additional investment sectors and client service applications that could further enhance Sterling Capital's competitive advantages while building market recognition for the firm's analytical innovation and strategic leadership. We are receiving inquiries from institutional clients and consulting opportunities that specifically request access to our cultural trend analysis capability. Marcus reported with satisfaction that reflected both professional validation and personal pride in his daughter's contribution to the family business legacy. The market recognition represented vindication of the strategic integration approach, while demonstrating that my 15 years of hidden research and capability development had created genuine competitive advantages that could benefit Sterling Capital's continued success and industry leadership. The implementation had achieved all strategic objectives while exceeding performance expectations and establishing foundation for continued innovation and growth that would position Sterling Capital for sustained competitive advantage in evolving market conditions. The success of Sterling Capital's transformation and the media attention surrounding the firm's innovative analytical capabilities created unexpected developments in the federal investigation of Sophia's theft and disappearance. International asset recovery proceedings had successfully frozen the stolen funds while tracking her movements through multiple offshore jurisdictions and false identity schemes. Agent Martinez contacted our family with updates indicating that Sophia was prepared to negotiate surrender and asset return in exchange for reduced charges and controlled prosecution that would minimize publicity and potential damage to Sterling Capital's reputation and business relations. Your sister has retained international legal counsel and expressed willingness to return the stolen funds in exchange for plea agreement that would involve limited incarceration and restitution, terms that acknowledge her cooperation with asset recovery efforts. Agent Martinez explained during a briefing session about the investigation status and legal options. The opportunity for negotiated resolution created complex considerations about justice, family relationships, and business protection that required careful evaluation of legal, financial, and personal factors that would influence long-term outcomes for all parties involved. Marcus approached the decision with characteristic focus on practical consequences and strategic optimization, while acknowledging the emotional complexity that family betrayal had created for everyone affected by Sophia's criminal action. Our primary objectives are asset recovery, legal resolution that protects Sterling Capital's reputation, and family healing that can address the underlying issues that motivated Sophia's criminal behavior, he outlined during family discussions about the proposed plea negotiation. The federal prosecutors were motivated to achieve efficient resolution that would recover stolen assets, while avoiding lengthy international litigation that could prove expensive and uncertain for all parties involved in the complex jurisdictional and procedural challenge. Catherine advocated for family reconciliation approaches that could address the psychological factors that had contributed to Sophia's criminal planning, while establishing accountability and consequences that would prevent future problems and rebuild family trust. Sophia's actions reflected underlying resentment and financial pressure that we failed to recognize or address appropriately, she observed with the insight that comes from careful analysis of family dynamics and individual motivation. Legal resolution must include psychological evaluation and treatment that can address these issues, while establishing frameworks for rebuilding family relationships based on honest communication and mutual support. The negotiation process required several weeks of complex legal discussions that balanced prosecution requirements with family interests and business protection, while ensuring that justice objectives were achieved through appropriate accountability and consequence. The final resolution included complete asset return, limited incarceration, with psychological treatment requirements, restitution terms that acknowledged financial damage, and probation conditions that would ensure ongoing monitoring and support for Sophia's reintegration into lawful activities and family relationships. More important, the resolution process created opportunities for family discussions about the systemic issues that had contributed to both Sophia's criminal behavior and my strategic deception, leading to commitments for more open communication and authentic relationships that could prevent future problems, while supporting everyone's legitimate interests and aspirations. The completion of the legal proceedings marked the end of the crisis period, while establishing foundation for family and business development that could integrate lessons learned from the challenging experiences, while building on the competitive advantages and strategic opportunities that had emerged from the revelation of my hidden capabilities and contribution. 6 months after the implementation of Sterling Capital's Cultural Trend Analysis Division, the financial services industry began recognizing the firm's innovative approach as a fundamental advancement in investment methodology, rather than merely an experimental addition to traditional analytical framework. Professional publications featured comprehensive analyses of our performance results. Academic institutions requested case study development for business school curricula, and competing firms initiated research programs attempting to replicate the competitive advantages we had achieved. Transformation of Sterling Capital from a traditional asset management firm facing competitive decline to an industry leader pioneering next-generation investment strategies represented validation of the strategic integration approach, while demonstrating the practical benefits of combining cultural insight with financial expertise. The recognition extended beyond performance metrics to encompass acknowledgement of intellectual innovation, that was reshaping industry understanding of market analysis and opportunity. Investment Management Review published a detailed examination of our methodology, titled Cultural Intelligence in Financial Markets, Sterling Capital's Revolutionary Approach to Investment Analysis. The article described how artistic community observation and psychological pattern recognition had enabled superior performance, while providing early identification of emerging opportunities that traditional quantitative analysis consistently overlooked. The academic analysis confirmed the sophistication of our approach, while establishing intellectual credibility that attracted attention from institutional investors, who recognized the strategic value of innovative analytical capability. The publication coincided with speaking invitations from professional conferences and consulting requests from other financial institutions, seeking to understand how cultural trend analysis could enhance their own investment process. Marcus Sterling received recognition as Financial Executive of the Year from the American Asset Management Association, an honor that acknowledged both his leadership in implementing innovative strategies and his vision in recognizing unconventional analytical capabilities that could benefit client service and competitive positioning. The award ceremony provided opportunities for industry networking that further enhanced Sterling Capital's reputation and business development prospects. However, the professional recognition also created new challenges related to protecting proprietary analytical methods while building market awareness of our capability. The competitive advantages we had achieved through cultural trend analysis required careful balance between demonstrating effectiveness and maintaining the secrecy that preserved our information-gathering advantages within artistic community. Industry attention validates our strategic approach, while creating pressures for disclosure that could compromise the competitive advantages we have developed. I explained during strategic planning sessions, focused on managing intellectual property protection and market positioning requirements. Maintaining access to artistic communities and cultural information sources requires preserving authenticity that might be affected if our analytical purposes become widely known within creative circles. The challenge required developing communication strategies that could promote Sterling Capital's capabilities while protecting the methodological details that enabled our analytical effectiveness. The solution involved emphasizing performance results and client benefits, rather than revealing specific research processes or information gathering techniques that competitors might attempt to replicate. The industry recognition established foundation for continued growth and competitive differentiation, while creating opportunities for expanding our analytical capabilities to additional market sectors and client service applications. The validation also provided personal satisfaction that 15 years of hidden research and capability development had achieved professional acknowledgement and strategic impact that exceeded initial expectations. The success of cultural trend analysis at Sterling Capital created opportunities for developing educational programs that could share insights about innovative analytical approaches, while building industry relationships and establishing thought leadership in emerging investment methodology. The initiative reflected recognition that competitive advantages often increase through strategic sharing rather than exclusive protection, particularly when educational activities enhance reputation and attract superior talent. Working with several prestigious business schools, I developed curriculum modules that explored the intersection of cultural analysis and financial decision-making, without revealing proprietary aspects of our specific research methodology. The educational programs provided academic credibility, while creating recruitment opportunities for identifying graduate students who possessed the intellectual curiosity and analytical capabilities that cultural trend analysis required. The mentorship component involved establishing intern programs that could introduce promising students to innovative analytical approaches, while providing Sterling Capital with access to emerging talent who understood both traditional financial analysis and creative thinking that cultural trend methodology demanded. The program attracted candidates from diverse academic backgrounds who brought fresh perspectives and enhanced analytical capabilities. Educational initiatives serve multiple strategic purposes, Marcus observed during program development discussion. They build industry relationships, enhance our reputation for intellectual leadership,
and create talent acquisition advantages that support continued innovation and competitive differentiation. The business school partnerships evolved into consulting relationships with academic researchers who were investigating behavioral economics and market psychology from theoretical perspectives that complemented our practical application of cultural trend analysis. The collaboration provided access to academic research while contributing to scholarly understanding of how psychological factors influence investment decision-making. Professor Elizabeth Chen, from Columbia University, who had encouraged my graduate research connecting cultural trends to consumer behavior, became a strategic advisor for the educational programs while conducting independent research that validated our analytical framework through academic methodology and peer review process. The practical application of cultural trend analysis to investment management represents significant advancement in understanding how psychological and sociological factors affect market behavior. Professor Chen explained during academic conference presentations that established scholarly foundation for our methodological innovation. The academic validation provided additional credibility while creating opportunities for publishing research papers that could establish intellectual property protection and thought leadership recognition without compromising competitive advantages or proprietary information gathering techniques. The mentorship initiative expanded to include young professionals within Sterling Capital who demonstrated aptitude for innovative analytical approaches while requiring development in cultural observation and psychological pattern recognition. That effective implementation of our methodology demanded creating internal training programs, required developing educational materials that could transfer knowledge effectively while maintaining quality control over analytical applications that would affect client portfolios and investment performance. The training process identified additional talent within the firm while building organizational capabilities that supported continued growth and strategic development. The educational activities created networks of former students and program participants who became advocates for Sterling Capital's innovative approaches while pursuing careers throughout the financial services industry. These professional relationships provided market intelligence and business development opportunities that enhanced our competitive positioning and strategic awareness. The demonstrated success of cultural trend analysis within domestic markets created opportunities for international expansion that could apply our analytical methodology to global investment opportunities while building Sterling Capital's presence in international financial centers. The expansion required adapting our cultural observation techniques to different artistic communities and creative industries while maintaining analytical rigor and performance standards. European markets presented particular opportunities for cultural trend analysis, given the diversity of artistic communities and the sophisticated understanding of cultural influence on economic development that characterized many international financial centers. Working with local partners, we established research capabilities in London, Paris, and Berlin that could provide cultural intelligence about emerging trends within European creative industry. The international expansion required significant investment in personnel, technology infrastructure, and regulatory compliance capabilities that could support global operations while maintaining communication and coordination with domestic analytical activity. The development process took 18 months of systematic planning and implementation that tested our organizational capabilities while creating foundation for sustained international growth. Global cultural trends often emerge simultaneously across multiple artistic communities before affecting broader economic indicators, I explained during expansion planning session. International research capabilities provide earlier identification of opportunities while enhancing our understanding of how cultural patterns develop and spread across geographic boundaries. The European research teams identified several emerging technology trends and consumer preference shifts that provided significant investment opportunities for Sterling Capital clients, while demonstrating the effectiveness of cultural trend analysis across different market environments and regulatory frameworks. Asian markets represented additional expansion opportunities that required different approaches due to cultural factors and market characteristics that affected how artistic communities operated and how cultural trends influenced economic development. Working with academic partners and local cultural institutions, we developed research methodologies that could accommodate these differences while maintaining analytical effectiveness. The Asia-Pacific expansion focused initially on Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Singapore, financial centers that possessed sophisticated artistic communities and creative industries that could provide cultural intelligence about emerging trends affecting technology, consumer goods, and entertainment sectors that represented significant investment opportunity. The International Research Network created competitive advantages that extended beyond investment opportunities, identification, to include early warning systems for market developments and risk factors that might affect global portfolio performance. The cultural intelligence provided strategic context that enhanced traditional economic and political analysis while improving risk management capability. The global expansion also created opportunities for developing investment products that could serve international clients while demonstrating Sterling Capital's analytical capabilities and market expertise across multiple jurisdictions and cultural environments. International recognition followed domestic success as financial publications and industry organizations acknowledged Sterling Capital's innovative approach to global investment analysis. The recognition included invitations to speak at international conferences and consulting opportunities with sovereign wealth funds and institutional investors seeking enhanced analytical capabilities. The continued success of cultural trend analysis and the growing recognition of effectiveness created opportunities for developing additional innovative analytical approaches that could further enhance Sterling Capital's competitive advantages while building intellectual property portfolios and thought leadership recognition within the financial services industry. The Innovation Laboratory Initiative involved establishing dedicated research capabilities that could explore emerging analytical methodologies while testing their practical applications under controlled conditions that minimized risk to client portfolios and operational stability. The laboratory approach enabled systematic evaluation of innovative concepts while maintaining appropriate separation from established investment processes. Research projects within the Innovation Laboratory included investigation of artificial intelligence applications to cultural trend analysis, development of predictive models that could identify emerging opportunities with greater precision and earlier timing, and exploration of how social media and digital communication patterns could enhance traditional cultural observation techniques. The artificial intelligence research focused on developing machine learning algorithms that could process vast amounts of cultural data while identifying patterns and trends that human analysis might overlook or process too slowly for optimal investment timing. The technology applications required collaboration with academic researchers and technology companies while maintaining protection of proprietary analytical methods. Artificial intelligence can enhance human analytical capabilities rather than replacing the cultural insight and psychological understanding that effective trend analysis requires, I explained during technology development planning session. The goal is augmentation that preserves the qualitative advantages of cultural observation while adding quantitative processing power and pattern recognition capability. The predictive modeling research involved developing mathematical frameworks that could formalize the relationship between cultural trends and subsequent economic developments, while creating forecasting capabilities that could improve investment timing and risk management effectiveness. Media analysis represented another frontier for enhancing cultural trend identification through systematic monitoring of digital communication patterns and online community behavior that might provide earlier identification of emerging preferences and social changes that would eventually affect market opportunity. The Innovation Laboratory attracted attention from technology companies and academic institutions seeking collaboration opportunities while creating intellectual property portfolios that could provide additional competitive advantages and potential licensing revenue for Sterling Capital.
The research activities also supported recruitment of exceptional talent who were attracted to opportunities for working on cutting-edge analytical development while contributing to practical applications that could affect real investment outcomes and client service excellence. The labored approach enabled Sterling Steetrol to maintain its position at the forefront of analytical innovation, while building capabilities that could adapt to changing market conditions and technological developments that might affect how cultural trend analysis could be most effectively implemented. Professional success and industry recognition that followed the revelation of my hidden capabilities created opportunities for personal growth and authentic self-expression that had been constrained during 15 years of maintaining false identity and concealing expertise from family, professional colleagues. The transformation extended beyond career advancement to encompass fundamental changes in how I understood myself and my potential for contributing to meaningful objectives. The elimination of deception and secrecy that had required constant psychological management, mental energy, and emotional capacity that could be redirected toward creative pursuits and strategic development that integrated all aspects of my identity rather than requiring compartmentalization and careful management of different personas. For the first time since college, I could pursue artistic activities for personal fulfillment rather than as cover for hidden financial research, while maintaining authentic relationships within creative communities that were no longer compromised by concealed motivations or strategic deception requirements. The artistic work that emerged during this period reflected integration of analytical thinking and creative expression that produced more sophisticated and meaningful results than either approach could achieve independently. The art became vehicle for exploring themes related to hidden potential, authentic identity, and the psychological complexity of human motivation that resonated with audiences who recognized universal experiences within specific creative expression. Gallery exhibitions of my new work attracted critical attention and commercial success that validated artistic capabilities that had been subordinated to strategic requirements during the years of financial research and investment build. The recognition provided personal satisfaction while demonstrating that multiple forms of excellence could coexist and mutually enhance each other when artificial constraints were removed. The integration of professional and personal identity created opportunities for developing relationships based on authentic communication rather than careful management of information sharing and strategic deception. Friends and colleagues could understand my actual circumstances and capabilities while providing support and collaboration based on accurate assessment rather than partial information. Family relationships evolved toward genuine intimacy and mutual respect as the revelation of my capabilities transformed dynamics that had been based on misconceptions and limited understanding of individual potential and contribution. Marcus and Catherine began seeking my input on various decisions, while acknowledging expertise that they had previously been unaware existed. The personal transformation also included recognition that the 15 years of hidden work had developed psychological resilience and strategic thinking capabilities that extended beyond financial analysis to encompass general problem-solving and leadership skills that could be applied to various challenges and opportunities. The experience of maintaining complex deception while achieving substantial success created understanding of human psychology and institutional dynamics that proved valuable for business leadership and strategic development that required navigating complex organizational and competitive environments. The transformation from hidden analyst to recognized leader provided evidence that authentic identity and professional excellence could coexist when circumstances permitted honest expression of capabilities and aspirations. The journey demonstrated that patient development of expertise combined with strategic timing could create opportunities for meaningful contribution that exceeded initial expectations, while validating years of dedicated effort and careful preparation. The personal satisfaction of achieving recognition for actual capabilities, while contributing to family business success and industry advancement, created foundation for continued growth and strategic development that could integrate all aspects of identity and potential rather than requiring sacrifice of authenticity for strategic advantage. 2 years following the successful integration of cultural trend analysis at Sterling Capital, the methodology had evolved from experimental innovation to established industry practice that was transforming how institutional investors approached market analysis and opportunity identification. The systematic validation of our approach through consistent performance results and academic research had created demand for standardized frameworks that could enable broader implementation across the financial services industry. The development of institutional standards required collaborative effort with regulatory authorities, academic institutions, and industry organizations to establish professional certification programs and ethical guidelines that could ensure quality implementation while protecting the analytical rigor that made cultural trend analysis effective. The standardization process represented the natural evolution of innovative methodology from proprietary competitive advantage to industry-wide practice that could benefit all market participants. Working with the CFA Institute and leading business schools, we developed comprehensive curriculum that could prepare financial professionals for effective application of cultural trend analysis while maintaining the intellectual foundation and practical skills that successful implementation require. The educational programs addressed both theoretical understanding and practical application, while establishing professional standards that could ensure consistent quality across different institutional environments. The curriculum development process required careful balance between knowledge sharing that could advance industry capabilities and protection of proprietary research methods that continued to provide Sterling Capital with competitive advantage. The solution involved teaching fundamental principles and analytical frameworks, while maintaining confidentiality regarding specific information sources and implementation techniques that enabled superior performance. Professor Chen coordinated the academic component while I provided practical expertise and case study development that demonstrated real-world applications without compromising sensitive operational detail. The collaboration created educational materials that were both academically rigorous and practically relevant, while establishing intellectual property protections that acknowledged Sterling Capital's pioneering contribution. The certification program attracted professionals from major institutional investors who recognized that cultural trend analysis represented fundamental advancement in investment methodology, rather than temporary competitive differentiation. The demand for training exceeded initial projections, while creating professional networks that enhanced industry adoption and collaborative development of best practices. Regulatory authorities, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, acknowledged cultural trend analysis as legitimate analytical methodology that could enhance traditional investment processes, while requiring appropriate disclosure and client communication protocol. The regulatory recognition provided institutional validation, while establishing legal frameworks that protected both practitioners and clients. The standardization efforts culminated in the establishment of the Cultural Investment Analysis Institute, a professional organization dedicated to advancing research and education in the intersection of cultural trends and financial markets. The institute provided ongoing professional development, while coordinating research initiatives that could continue advancing the field through collaborative academic and industry effort. Marcus Sterling served as the founding chairman of the institute while I assumed responsibility for research coordination and professional standards development. The leadership roles acknowledged our pioneering contributions, while establishing platform for continued innovation and industry advancement that could benefit all participants in financial markets. The success of cultural trend analysis and its recognition as legitimate investment methodology created responsibility for developing the next generation of professionals who could advance the field while maintaining the analytical rigor and ethical standards that ensured effective implementation. The mentorship initiative expanded beyond Sterling Capital to encompass industry-wide talent development that could support continued innovation and professional excellence. The Graduate Fellowship Program established partnerships with leading universities to identify doctoral candidates' research interests aligned with cultural trend analysis, while providing financial support and practical experience that could prepare them for careers in innovative investment management. The fellowship recipients represented diverse academic backgrounds including psychology, sociology, anthropology, and fine arts in addition to traditional finance and economics. The interdisciplinary approach reflected recognition that effective cultural trend analysis required broad intellectual foundation that transcended conventional financial education, while maintaining rigorous analytical standards that could produce reliable investment results. The diversity of academic perspective enhanced research capabilities, while creating collaborative opportunities that advanced theoretical understanding alongside practical application. Sarah Martinez emerged as one of the most promising fellowship recipients through her doctoral research at Stanford University, examining how demographic transitions influenced artistic preferences and subsequent consumer behavior patterns. Her academic work provided theoretical foundation for practical applications, while demonstrating the intellectual depth that cultural trend analysis required for continued advancement. Working closely with Sarah and other fellowship recipients, we developed research projects that explored emerging applications of cultural trend analysis, while testing new methodological approaches that could enhance effectiveness and expand applicability to additional market sectors. The collaborative research created mentoring relationships, while advancing the field through systematic investigation of theoretical and practical questions. The mentorship process required careful balance between providing guidance and encouragement, while allowing independent development of analytical capabilities and research interests that could contribute to field advancement through diverse perspectives and innovative approaches. The goal was developing professionals who could advance cultural trend analysis rather than simply replicating existing methods. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.